Welcome to the Voodoo Power Podcast.
Welcome to Plates and Pancakes. We're sitting down today with Bill Miller. Coach Miller is a certified strength and conditioning specialist that has a history of training baseball players from youth levels all the way to the MLB. He is known for spreading and applying the most advanced methods of strength training to all of his athletes. Miller was a 4-year starter at Trinity Christian College in Palos Heights, Illinois, where he graduated with a degree in exercise science. Coach Miller has authored multiple books and articles on developing explosive power and velocity improvements. Swing Fast, Throw Fast, and Testing His Training are a few of his books. So welcome to the show, Coach.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on.
I stumbled on your stuff, and not necessarily for throwing velocity like you might think, but your ideas on velocity carried over well to track throwers, javelin specifically. So through that, I bought your, I want to say, Throw Fast book, and I was incredibly impressed with that. A lot of these questions are going to come from that. I took notes off of it amongst some other articles. But when you sit down and you write a book like that, how do you get your ideas expressed and put that much of yourself out there and not be a lightning rod for criticism from every other coach that thinks they have it figured out?
Yeah, especially with throwing. I think with most things in baseball, there's a huge argument lane that you could take. So if you're all about velocity development, you're going to get arguments from the you got to throw strikes people, so on and so forth, right? So that there's always people talking about mechanics or whatever. For me, the way that I kind of navigated it was I tried to focus less on the mechanical side of things and more on the arguments of what we should be doing in the weight room, how we should be tracking our training metrics, like our explosive power outputs, things of that nature, how we should be tracking arm care, not just doing the same 5-pound exercise, but how we should progressively overload it, tracking arm health, things of that nature. And I know that some of those ideas almost became a part of different people on different lanes. So by that, I mean, the people who want all velocity, they loved it because it's helping their kids throw harder. But then on the other side of the coin, the people who are more, in tune with just throw strikes, hit your spots, be a good pitcher, that type of thing, I think they liked it because you weren't trying to just rip it for the radar gun. You were doing other things to make yourself throw harder. So I think that's kind of how I navigated it. So I kind of skated between the two big argumentative lanes there. But as far as like the confidence goes in writing, I've always been a fairly confident person, but I would say for anyone who's trying to get into writing, the thing that you have to remember is those who are arguing you and trying to start fights with you online, they don't really exist in real life. You'll never come across them in real life. And nobody in real life would ever say those things to you and try to fight. Like nobody would try to fight you over baseball stuff in real life unless you're at a travel ball tournament or something. But so they're not real. But the other part too is you have to almost think in your head, like, if you're afraid of that, why do you give them that power over you? What is it about them that is, feeling like they are above you or feeling like they are, this unobtainable entity that you can't defeat? And so that's kind of something that I've always thought about, like, all right, if this person does want to come at me and argue with me, like I can beat them. I can combat them. I can compete with them in that lane as well. So I've always felt like that's kind of my approach to things. I don't want to give people the power over me to get me to not do something. You know what I mean?
And that makes a lot of sense. The one thing I did enjoy about the book as I was reading through it, to me, it was very West Side-esque. You covered both sides very well, and that's the kind of training we do. So I gravitated towards it. You're building a great base of strength through the deadlift, through the squat, through different metrics. But at the same time, you're attacking the things that carry over the field, the velocities. You're doing your med ball work, your dynamic work. How have you been able to take those ideas and kind of put them together and see a positive growth in baseball players when baseball hasn't always gravitated towards those strength and conditioning ideas?
Yeah, so I have to give a ton of credit to Chris Beardsley. A lot of this all started when I went through his mentorship. And, we were just kind of going through different ideas of how to approach training, and he's teaching me a lot. The things, though, that he kind of made that really stuck with me. That, like, if you look around you, just take a 10,000 foot view. Who are the most successful people in every realm of training? Westside Barbell is the most successful in terms of powerlifting. Sure, there's other people that are good, but a lot of the basics are done in Westside. Whatever it is, like you said, the big three movements, a lot of the max effort and dynamic effort work, they cover things so well. So it's like, okay, let's take those ideas, and now let's also apply the explosive side of things. Let's also apply the arm care side of things. All those things that also need to be there on top of that. Let's just make sure we're checking every single box to the best of our ability, so that you don't have to just target one thing. We're targeting 4 or 5 things really well throughout the year. And so I guess that's one thing I kind of don't really do a lot of, is a ton of periodization. At least I don't talk about that much in the book. You can, but for me, if you just went max effort, dynamic effort, max effort, dynamic effort, and throw in between those days and make sure you're constantly monitoring yourself over time, you are going to see really good results. And it's just because you're hammering all the nails to the best of your ability really well. And that's kind of the way I wanted to approach it.
Going through that, right after I read that book, I went and bought a grip strength monitor because we were prepping some kids for the state track meet. And going through that, you made a very, very good point on, hey, you can tell what the back's doing. You can tell what the shoulder's doing through what the grip's doing. And if you're not PRing at your grip, when we're getting close to a state meet, we need to start doing some things like you said. We need to start monitoring that so that we can start doing some things to get you there. When did you get on the idea of the grip strength and how much that is affecting the ball players?
That was a Chris Beardsley idea. Back then, we were just calling it a fatigue readiness test. And so the problem with the training that I was doing, where you're max effort, dynamic effort, and we're just keep rolling through these days. We'll throw off days in there, obviously, but you're just keeping pounding. You're going to run into some unseen central nervous system fatigue, perhaps. You might even just be sore in general. You might be worn down from school or other things that you're not recovering very well from your training because of. So all that is playing a factor as well. And if you just have this little readiness test, okay, I'm ready to let it rip today. I'm ready to, my body is functioning at a high enough rate to where when I go really hard in the weight room or really hard in my throwing session, I'm going to get something out of it. Because guess what? If your body is only firing at 85 or 90%, you might be able to compete fine on it, but we don't want to. We want to be at 100 as much as possible. So it's like you said, when it's competition time, we got to get as many hundreds as possible, like as many times, to just give yourself that chance at throwing really far, or, in a baseball game, hitting those numbers for scouts or whatever you have to do in order to reach your goals. If you're at a deficit, you're almost just wasting your time. So we don't want to train very often in a deficit, but we definitely won't want to compete in a deficit at all.
In saying that, I didn't understand what the grip was looking at. And then after reading the book, it kind of clarified that you're looking at the decelerators of the back through the grip. I don't know if I thought it was the forearm or if I thought what it was, but when the book said that, it was like it opened up a whole new world. Like, okay, this makes way more sense to me at what we're looking at. If we can't stop that arm, if we can't control that elbow through high speeds, we are increasing our chance of injury. Is that kind of, am I summing that up well?
Yeah, and then like if you wanted to get more specific to the shoulder, what you could do is something like I'll go this way. So like a shoulder turn backwards, and you're pulling in this direction. Pulling on a crane scale is what we do, but I know there's other devices out there that monitor your force production. But if you just imagine, we're pulling as hard as we can for that rear shoulder muscle to fire, you're going to get good numbers on that as well. So here's what's interesting. I have a kid who came in the other day, and he was testing like shoulder external rotation on the crane scale. And so we're measuring how many pounds of force you have it here, 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 here. Right when he hit about, I think it was like maybe that halfway mark, maybe about 45 degrees between here and here, he like his entire number just went in the tank. He was like 30 pounds up here, 30 pounds down here, but he was like 4 or 5 pounds here, like completely no strength. So you're like, okay, there's like a hole, there's like a gap right in the middle portion there. that we're probably not able to really target that well. But it's a good thing that we tested it, because it's like, okay, this is, something that if you're not able to achieve strength throughout this entire arc of the movement, it's going to be really tough to then get all the way through that internal rotation and that pronation as we're throwing a baseball, and maintain that strength throughout that as well to decelerate the arm. So there's a lot of good information that you could get from shoulder testing on the crane scale as well. But overall, if you're just using the grip, that's like a really nice look at the entire system's function on that given day. So if normally your grip strength is supposed to be 150, but you can't get it over 115 or 120, yeah, your whole system's at a deficit to where you're not going to decelerate very well. You're probably going to struggle with gaining or getting anything out of your throwing velocity sessions, just because you're not operating at a high enough level.
Eccentric strength and eccentric tempo, and the more I get into this, the more I'm realizing how important the eccentric speeds of a lift are. And you listen to Ralph Ullman, you listen to Randy Huntington, when they started narrowing that stuff down, they started seeing that, like, hey, we got to get into the lift faster. We have to, that way we can come out of the lift faster. When did the eccentric strength and speed start showing up in baseball players for you that you're like, hey, we need to attack this?
When I was working with Beardsley, this is another big thing he talked about, was if you broke down the movement, and he didn't come up with this, but I know I've heard it from other people as well, but if you break down any kinetic sequence, you're always going to be accelerating for a portion, like each segment, and then that segment has to decelerate. Well, when that segment of the chain is decelerating, there are certain muscle groups that are sort of throwing on the brakes. So we have these actin-myosin cross bridges. Every time we flex our muscles, the cross bridges come together, and then they'll come apart when we're relaxing those muscles. Well, when we're decelerating them, they came together, but now they're trying to resist excessive lengthening. If we're Gumby, super weak, no eccentric strength, and we're trying to decelerate, everything just comes together. And so there's no real deceleration aspect there for the next segment of the chain to accelerate with. So think about, like, if you're throwing on a really solid, stable surface versus throwing on a wavy, rocky boat. The big difference there in your ability to plant your feet, stay grounded, and accelerate around that. So that's how decelerators work. And I think the hips are a big one, the front knee, especially on that lead leg block. But I would say the torso plays a dual role in accelerating and decelerating. And then that rear shoulder, obviously the front side of the shoulder is driving forward, but then we need to be able to get everything in that rear shoulder to decelerate it. That's how I've always looked at it. So now when we're thinking about what those muscle fibers are doing, we have to train those fibers, especially in those accelerators, to fire really fast. And then we have to get those decelerators to resist that lengthening. And that's where eccentrics come into play. Isometrics play a good role too. Isometrics play a great role for the tendons side of the coin within this. The tendon does have to be sturdy when we're doing these sorts of things, but it's also the muscle fibers that have to resist that lengthening, and they're going to provide the force for that deceleration. And so that's where eccentric overload movements, especially eccentrics in general, do a good job of improving what's called titin contact. So there's actin and myosin, but there's also titin that sort of binds these together to keep them from coming apart. Well, the more eccentrics you do, the more titin content your muscle fibers will have. And we've seen this directly. When we're testing on the crane scale, we'll see kids who have a higher eccentric to concentric ratio. A lot of times, those are the kids that are super well trained, or they're more grown adults now. They're playing college and pro ball. But those are the individuals that are like, your shoulder is ready to throw a baseball because I know that your eccentric strength is there. Whereas if you have somebody that's just being pulled down with the crane scale and they're just Gumby, they're probably not ready to go, if that makes sense.
Now, are you looking at this through the lens of velocity measurements, whether that be time to peak velocity, eccentric speeds? How are you gauging that you are getting the growth in eccentrics that you want?
I'm just using the crane scale. So that's the way that I like to do it. It's really easy. I buy the $51 one off of Amazon, and we just set it up with, crane scale, handle, I'm pulling on one end, the athlete's pulling on the other. And the crane scale is literally just measuring the amount of force that they're getting throughout the entire arc of the movement. You can see the screen right in front of you. So it's a very inexact, but pretty good way of measuring what the number is on your rear shoulder with whatever you're doing. If it's a straight arm or, external rotation type movement. But I would say the other part of the side, if you don't have a crane scale, obviously what you can handle with about 3 to 5 seconds on the way down in that eccentric is probably going to be a good indicator as well. So if you're able to withstand, 200 pounds today in your movement 3 seconds on the way down before you're basically giving out, we want by the end of the off season to be 250, 275. You know what I mean? We want to increase the weight that we can withstand. And the reason why is because if you go slower with a light load, it doesn't really recruit that tightened content adaptation. We need to keep getting heavier and resist against more force if we want more tightened content to really be applied to those muscle fibers.
Now, as you're working through this, are you using weight releasers? Are you using bands? What are some tools that you're using to help? Or is it just heavy weight and you're just coming down into pins? How are you building the eccentric strength?
So we don't really do it on the big three anymore. We used to try it with like a split squat. And what we would do is we would set up maybe about 85% of the athletes 1 rep max on the bar. And we would have an athlete on each side, imagine like a spotter, but instead they were literally pulling the bar down. We did that for about a year. And I would say it was good results, but not great. It was very inconsistent. Because there was only about 4 or 5 athletes that I felt like actually knew what was happening and knew how to do it right. And then there was a bunch of athletes where you try to teach this to them and it's just in one ear, out the other. They don't know what they're doing. It wasn't very beneficial. But so I would say the majority of our eccentric overload work now, I guess a weight releaser would make sense. I just never bought them. But yeah, we just use the crane scale, manual resistance, and I do it myself. And I've had a few other athletes that do it themselves too, but for the most part, I'm the one doing it. Now, granted, I have the luxury of, ever since the baby especially, I only train about 15, 20 athletes in a given day, small groups of 4 to 5 usually. So it's not like I have these big groups of like a team that you would have to work with. Maybe some people working or listening to this have to work with much bigger groups than I do. So I have that luxury, I guess.
Coming out of the eccentric, we're in hopefully I explained this good enough that I can get my question conveyed. Let's take the bench press or whatever. I know you're not necessarily working the big three, but maybe my idea will come through on this. When you're really working the bench press fast and you're coming down fast through eccentric speeds, that point that you have to stop the bar, reverse the bar, overcome the inertia, and come through that little dip. How important is that in throwing velocity and hitting velocity, that ability to overcome the eccentric part, reverse it, and then hit a hard concentric?
Yeah, I would say there are really good examples if you just look through training history in general of a guy that can drop the bar really fast, almost release the bar a little bit, catch it, and bring it right back up. I think that's really cool. The problem is it's not very applicable, again, especially if you're working with a lot of clients. Somebody's going to screw this up and get hurt. But I do think it's extremely important because the ability to access that pec as it's like relaxing and then catches everything and fires back the other way, that's the ability to accelerate fast. So those accelerators, this is where that high speed component comes in. What the way that I like to do is almost like the opposite of a bench press. We're dropping from the top in a plyometric push-up. We catch in that deep position and then drive it right back out. Try to do a plyometric from that type of a movement. I think is a better way to do it. It's safer at least. And I think when you're dropping really fast in the eccentric, you have to remember that whatever load you're catching, it's going to be about twice as much at that catch portion just because of gravity. So if I'm dropping 45 pounds here, by the time I catch it, it's going to feel like 75 before I start to move it back in the opposite direction. So we always have to remember that that plays a role too. And it's probably not the safest to start dropping a bar really fast and reversing it fast. But I will say that it is very important. And if you were to just think big picture, if you were to take a kid, 13-year-old, and be like, okay, in 13 years, when you're a big leaguer, I want you to be able to drop a 225-pound bar, catch it, and reverse it really fast. That would be like a nice thing to be able to do. But you don't necessarily have to do bench press only to get that adaptation.
Right. There's plenty of adaptations or plenty of exercises you could use to get that adaptation, whether it be a plate drop or different things. It's just something I've thought about a lot when you watch that movement and the movement is being done correctly. In my mind, you can see where that will carry over to the field.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right. I think if you were to just build like a guy to throw 100 miles per hour in your brain, or a guy to throw a javelin 85 meters or 90, that's what you would want them to be able to do. Like, that's one of the big things, is catch a weight and reverse it super, super fast. And I think that's really the basis of throwing the accelerators, at least. Like, that's their job, is we have to stretch. And the moment that stretch needs to stop, we're firing in the opposite way super, super fast.
I had thought of this earlier as we were talking through something, and I didn't get it wrote down. I kind of lost my spot. Now I'm back. So work capacity in young pitchers, I'm sure you'll see a spike. You'll see a really good velo, but their ability to maintain that's not there. Now you got probably a few options. Through throwing, they can build work capacity. But when they're young, how much is too much on the throwing? I know we watch that more. So how are you able to build work capacity in these guys without just hammering their arm through throwing?
Yeah, I would say at age 13, I'm not too worried about doing a ton of throwing to build the capacity. And here's why. They are not nearly done growing yet. Like, their bones, everything. So when you start to think about those kids that get those little leaguer elbows, where the bone is literally breaking, if we throw too much, that's what's going to happen. We know this. We know through looking at the big picture, this is what happens when you have a kid who throws too much. They get little leaguer's elbow. Well, what happens in 5, 6, 7 years when they're throwing 90, 95, they have these really beautiful patterns, but their bones and their tendons over time, just through the many years of maladaptations that probably happened starting while they were in puberty, age 13, 14, they're growing with these maladaptive joints. Well, sure enough, they're going to run into future problems. So if in a perfect world, what I would say is, if you have a kid who is, they want to throw, they want to build that capacity, they want to throw harder to get noticed by D1s and scouts and all that, that's cool. Let's tap into every other bucket that we can as much as possible. So have perfect strength training form first, build the strength on top of that. Have great explosiveness, learn how to sprint properly, be really good at jumping and other explosive movements that we can do that we know won't cause little leaguer's elbow. And those things will build up your velocity. And guess what? If you are still throwing twice a week on top of that, that's enough volume to where you should see good throwing results. But we're not trying to throw for the gun 3, 4, 5 times a week. We're not doing these stupid tournaments where you have to throw 100 pitches. We're just doing enough to keep your good throwing mechanics, keep you whippy, keep you loose, keep things moving in the right direction there. But we're doing all the other stuff that will build you up so that someday maybe you get into college and you're like, hey, man, I'm stuck at 88. I need to get to 92 in order to get, drafted, right? That's what every kid tells me. So now we can just say, you're a big, strong kid. You got great weight room numbers. We know we don't need to go there too much anymore. We can start tapping into a little bit more throwing stuff and really try to get everything out of that. We can start juicing that a little bit more. That's, to me, the best route. So if you have a 13-year-old, play the long game. I promise you, nobody will say 2 words about your kid if they're throwing in the big league someday when they're 28. But that's over twice their lifetime to get to. You know what I mean? So you have to play the long game as a pitcher. I don't know how to explain it. Hitters are a little bit different when they get scouted and drafted at a young age really high. A lot of times they wind up making it through. But there is no good route for scouting right now. When you draft this young kid that throws really hard or looks like they're going to be the next best thing in baseball, a lot of times, unfortunately, they get fizzled out because they get hurt. This is what happens. So there's no perfect route to becoming a big league pitcher, becoming a professional, or anything like that. You have to take the long game and play that as much as possible, because you know that is what will work longer term than just go balls to the wall with a bunch of Trevor Bauer volume for a 13-year-old kid. I just don't see that being beneficial.
I want to hit a few questions. You're on the private side, so we all probably combat some of these things, but private side, you have it a little bit different.
Mm-hmm.
So the athlete has to find time to get into you, and it seems like youth, competitive baseball, softball, they have them going so hard between hitting lessons, pitching lessons, games. Then they have school on top of that, everything. How are you managing the strength training for these athletes? How are you getting them in between their hectic schedules?
I mean, I'm very fortunate. I don't have to deal with it because everybody that I train, we don't do travel ball. No, it's like a big thing. I'm not a travel ball guy. And so when I get a kid, I'm like, hey, if you're not able to get in 4 or 5 times a week, sorry, I don't take you. You know, I take a select group of kids, and the only ones that I do take are very serious. So they're either playing in like a local league or something like that. But I will say it works really well for them. So just understand that if you are a parent, the stresses of, the only thing that we can do is travel ball. We're at the mercy of this organization, stuff like that. Right now, this podcast is coming out at a good time because a lot of organizations are re-upping for next year. So before you go buying these $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 packages and paying these travel organizations all this money and all this crazy crap that you hear about, before you do that, sit down and look at what will get me to where I want to be. And there's no two ways about it. You're probably going to need about 1,000 strength training sessions to look like a completely different individual. If you're a slow, skinny kid right now, you're not going to get fast out of nowhere. You need to train at it. You can get faster, but you're talking 5 training sessions a week for probably 15, 20 weeks at a time. And then you go into your season where you hopefully maintain your gains. Hopefully you get to come in for training. But for the most part, you're training in the summer and in the winter time. And that's where you get all your big bulk of training done. And you got to get a ton of training in. So no matter what route you choose, they have to understand that lens first. Like if you have one magical training session with me or you, it's great, but it's not going to make that big of a dent in them as much as 100, 200, 500, 1,000 training sessions will. And so that's what I always try to get across to athletes is like, if you want to look like a D1 athlete and you're a freshman in high school, we're talking 1,000 or 1,500 weightlifting sessions, 1,000 to 1,500 batting practice sessions. All these things need to be high quality along the way, not just quantity. So they have to understand that first of all. So moving on to your actual question of how do you deal with it? Like I said, I don't deal with it as directly as some people might have to. But what I would say is, especially throughout the majority of the beginning of my career, back when I used to work at that old facility, it closed down during COVID time, but that was a travel ball organization. And what I would say to kids is you have to track your major metrics: medicine ball, rotational throw velocities, overhead velocities, sprinting speed, jumping performance. And then we would measure those isometrics on the crane scale, pal off, overhead, whatever. We had to make sure that those were improving no matter what. If you only come in for training once or twice this week, that's fine, but it's inexcusable for you to not see a climb in those training metrics. And I think that helped kids sort of see that there was value in the weight room because they would see other kids' numbers were going up and theirs weren't. They're like, oh, I need to get faster. I need to run more sprints. I need to take this more seriously. So I think it helped them take the onus on themselves. And so now instead of me just telling them how important weight room is, they actually saw the value because there was a number attached to whatever that we were doing.
To prove your worth, you have to find ways to measure as many things as possible. You're going to have parents, you're going to have clients, you're going to have multiple people saying, hey, I'm not feeling like I'm getting better. Even though there's remarkable improvement, it's so crazy how easy they forget. How are you finding ways to measure different things so that you can say, hey, this is where we've grown. Maybe it's something that we haven't even thought of. I mean, obviously a squat's easy to measure, a deadlift's, velocities are easy to measure.
Yeah.
What are some other things that may not jump out in our head as important to measure, but you've seen a lot of success measuring them?
So this can get screwed up a lot, but to me, the two biggest ones were the pal off hold on the crane scale. Like as long as you're doing it with good form, not leaning your whole body over or anything like that. With strict form, the pal off hold, and then the lead arm rotational throw with like a 2-pound ball for the radar gun. Those were the two biggest tells to see if you could hit a ball far. And I would say a majority of my career where I've seen the best correlations of everything was with exit velocity and bat speed. The pal off hold and the 2-pound rotational throw, those were the best. They're like, I'm talking like a 95% correlation between the two, maybe even better. So when you're talking to a kid and they come in, they're like, why is my exit velocity only 85? Well, let's test your pal off hold. Oh, it's only 35 pounds. You're half as strong as the college and pro guys that come in. So now when you go to swing a bat, you're only imparting half the force. And so now you start to get the wheels turning in their brain a little bit. So how do I get my pal off hold up? Do I just do it all the time? It's like, no, you have to do deadlifts. You have to do bench press. You have to do heavy rows, and you have to make those go up to make your pal off hold go up. And so now the wheels start to turn a little bit better. But yeah, I would say that those are the two main ones that I would constantly just, it took 5 minutes for me to test it. And I was like, see, this is why you suck, kid, in a nicer way than that. But there was, those are the two main ones that I've had for all my years of training, pretty much since probably 6, 7 years ago now. We've been tracking it that long. So it's always been a part of everything. And now I can use that to justify why you're going to be lifting so much this month and why you're not going to be doing med ball throws. Because a lot of times you'll see a skinny kid, they don't throw the med ball that bad, but their pal off hold is terrible. So you see where they're weak, and you see where we need to target a lot more.
You don't control playing time. You're not a ball coach. You can't require kids to show up other than they can't come anymore if they're inconsistent. I mean, there's nothing to make athletes come to your facility or to keep coming back to your facility. There's nothing you got on them. So how are you able to set up a situation where athletes want to come back and continually come back for a long period of time?
I think a lot of time it's the environment that they're training in. It's pretty competitive. A lot of them are all pretty close with each other. Like they all have their own group chats and they're talking with each other, even if they don't go to the same schools or play in the same leagues. They're always kind of chatting with each other. And, whether it's they're busting each other or they're, saying good ups, good job, whatever, they're always kind of going back and forth. And I think there's just that brotherly camaraderie that like, I have to go back and train because I miss these guys. I want to hang out with them, but I also want to like get better and show everybody that I'm getting better. There's just like that little pride aspect to it. But I think if you don't really have that, it's tough to really coax kids to come back. I mean, sure, you could track their metrics, but if they're not really amped to want to make that drive out to your facility, to want to get up at 6 a.m. before school or whatever it is, it's going to be tough to really convince them because they could get a lot of the same stuff elsewhere. But yeah, to me, it's that environment. It's fun. Like we have a lot of fun. We're laughing all the time and competing and stuff like that. And I think that's probably the biggest thing that gets kids coming back.
It's crazy to me. We were talking about this in the gym last night, and maybe you've stumbled on it, is when you get the kids at serious and you're having fun and you're driving competition and you're seeing improvement, the people from the outside looking in don't understand, and they'll almost label it a cult. These kids are in here all the time, and they're like the Voodoo Power cult. It's like, well, we're not trying to be a cult. We're just trying to offer something that helps these kids reach their dream.
Yeah, and that's a real thing. Like, so if you get a kid who maybe comes in midway through the summer or at the end of the summer when everybody else has already been kind of like driving the ship the whole way, and it's like they get on board and they're looking around and be like, man, I suck at this. Like, I'm really bad at all these exercises. I can't compete right now. And, I'm getting beat by a high school kid who's 17 and I'm 19, 20 years old and stuff like that. So it is an interesting thing sometimes you don't always see that progress happening, but like you said, from the outside, or if you were to just jump in and join your training group, how, much you guys have made progress from the start of an off season, just because you've been doing it every day and competing, and you don't always see those initial results right off the bat. But if you take a 10,000 foot view, you're making tons of progress just because of that competitive environment.
You're working with everything from young kids to MLB guys, recognizing that even some of those 13-year-olds or even younger, they know their bodies pretty well. Some have no clue what's going on, but some of them really understand their bodies well and understand what's going on. So learning to work with athletes and get their feedback and how they feel. How long did it take to kind of put those pieces together and be like, hey, you're working with a mind, not just a body, and they understand to a certain extent of what's going on?
So I work a lot with guys in the batting cages directly as well. Like I was just throwing live at bats before, actually. So we did that. Everybody was hitting, and then they come back and live. Well, the thing is, when I'm doing a hitting session with a kid or with a group of kids, I really don't say anything. We'll set up the video, we'll set up the Rapsodo blast sensors, we'll see what's happening, but I don't really say much. And I let them kind of come to me with, hey, what do you see in this video? Go ahead, take a look. Like, what do you see? They'll bring me things. They'll be like, oh man, this looks weird. I didn't know I was doing that. I got to work on this. And be like, okay. So now they've given me the feedback of what they're feeling, literally feeling in the cages and looking at their film, what they feel they need to do. Now it's my job to just put them down a path that will get them there. We're not going to try to fix it in one day or 1 week. It's going to take a lot of reps, but by me keeping my mouth shut a little bit more, it gives them the freedom to kind of explore themselves what's happening. I can see on film why a kid misses a pitch, but if they don't feel it themselves, or if they don't figure it out themselves, I didn't help them. There's a lot of times in baseball, especially throwing too. Oh man, I had no idea my arm was here at foot strike. I thought I was here. I thought I was getting here. Whatever it is, they have to explore it, feel it, and give themselves the internal cues to get over the hump. So that's kind of my route to that sort of thing. I guess you could apply that to a lot of different ways. But when you are giving them the video feedback, I mean, just use your phone. Like, I don't get too fancy with that. Radar gun feedback is great. Rapsodo, blast, those types of things. Just giving them the objective feedback in front of them and allowing them to explore, I think that's everything, because now they're going to become their smartest person to rely on for hitting or throwing, whatever it is.
There was a couple ideas in there that hit me as you were talking about it. So there's one thing I think I've learned is knowing when to step back and enjoy what you've helped athletes gain, and letting them find these things on their own, and they're striving to be better, and they're working inside themselves and staying out of the way and letting that process happen. The other thing, and you didn't really mention this specifically, but maybe you've seen it, is as your athletes start figuring things out in themselves, their willingness to help the athletes around them. And all of a sudden it seems like athletes can coach athletes better than a coach can coach athletes. Have you stumbled on that?
1,000% yes. So I had a kid who played at Murray State this year, great College World Series run, all that. I have a few other D1 kids, right? So what I've noticed is when working with them over the years, like, we always had the conversation. They were always good players, so they are going to tell me stuff that they feel, and I can trust what they're feeling and what they're doing is probably going to work because they're good. Well, by allowing them to do that, they became really smart, and they become sponges for all of this information they're getting at the D1 level at Murray State. That's a great coaching staff over there. So guess what? This summer they bring it back, and now everybody else around them is doing all the things that the Murray State coaches were teaching, or the other coaches at this other school were teaching. So it's like, damn, where'd you get that drill from? Oh, okay, you got it from him. I get it now. So you're exactly right, and we saw it firsthand when these kids do start to play around other really good people and good coaching staffs and stuff like that. They are able to sort of pick up on things that maybe we were talking about in the cages, or maybe they were talking about they felt in the cages, and they're able to become a sponge for the game. And I think it helps them get better, but you're exactly right. All the younger kids are getting better too because of it.
I noticed it with one athlete I have in speed. He's a running back, so getting his velocities up was very important. And me and him would have conversations. He would try it. He would see what worked, and he would see an increase in his speed. Well, before too long, he's coaching the whole gym on speed.
Yeah.
And we're seeing the best numbers we've ever seen. And, the kids are coming and asking me questions, and they're like, well, he said this and he said that. And I'm like, that's exactly right. Is it working? Yes, it's working. It's like somehow he turned into an amazing coach, and all he was doing was letting guys know what was working for him.
Mm-hmm. No doubt. And so another part of this that doesn't get talked about enough, and I know that this is a thing that kids talk about in our weight room, is how to have that BS meter for stuff online. Like you'll see a lot of drills, a lot of videos, workouts, stuff like that. You have to know when it's BS, when it's just crap. And you don't have to have me tell you. Like these kids are able to figure it out for themselves now. But I think before, if they just thought that, oh, I have to wait for my coach to tell me, if they're in that mindset, then they're going to treat Instagram reels or whatever videos, they're going to treat that the same way. So now there's, this dude that's on TikTok that's selling whatever supplements, and he's probably on steroids, and they're going to soak that up because they think that that's good information. But because they start to think for themselves, now they're like, this guy's full of crap. I don't need that. And I think that makes their own lives a lot better as well.
That would be the one thing that I have noticed is the longer these kids are in the gym, the better their performance is getting to be, that they're learning that Instagram and TikTok is not real.
Yeah, seriously, yeah.
It's just everybody's putting their best videos on there, and they're not in the context of what's actually going on. And so once you reach that level with athletes, like you said, you can cut a lot of the nonsense out because they're just not going to try it. They know it's not going to work.
Yeah. And it's funny too, like I know this is a little bit off topic, but talking about like the content creation game, it's something that I've stepped away from a lot over the years. I used to try to post every day and all this other stuff, but after a while you run out of ideas and you're just trying to come up with BS for Instagram, and you realize that's not good. But the one thing I was talking with an MLB client that I trained, he came in over All-Star break, and he was talking about like, you see some of these coaches, they're talking about a big leaguer in their hitting videos as if they were in the meetings that day or they were in their batting practice session that day. Like they know them personally. It's like, you don't know what these guys are going through. So my kind of rule of thumb after thinking about that is, if I'm going to post something on social media, I want to make sure if a big leaguer or a big league coach or another coach like yourself in my realm, if they read this, do they think it's BS? If they think it's BS, I'm not posting it. So you almost have to have that standard of like the people that are in your realm that you really respect. You'd better make sure that you're doing right by them when you post on social media, not just trying to get 12-year-old kids to click on your videos and comment and stuff like that.
There's a lot to what you said, and we've had this discussion in the gym. Kids are like, well, why don't you post this? Why don't you post that? Because I might be emailing a coach or messaging a coach through Instagram to have them on the podcast. And if they go through all of our content and it's ridiculous or it's fake or it's crappy, they're not coming on. So like you said, I would rather limit my posts a little bit and have some quality on there as opposed to just throwing random stuff out and hoping that it hits.
Right. And me personally, like, I don't care. Like, if somebody wants to go and make their money, go for it, dude. Like, do what you got to do. I would never, ever tell somebody what to do. But I do know that that's kind of my rule of thumb when I want to post something is like, all right, like there's a layer here that you have to make sure that it's good enough for that first.
This is something I've slowly come to terms with. And maybe it took me a little while, but it doesn't need to be a whole new plan every cycle. You can make very small modifications to your workout and stay somewhat on the same path and get better gains than if every cycle's a whirlwind of new exercises.
Mm-hmm.
Finding the modifications that work, and then when did you realize that, hey, I don't have to tweak very much to keep the growth growing?
Well, so my thought process is this. If what we're going to do right now, let's say we've been doing the same 5-6 basic exercises, if what we're about to do again this week or this month isn't going to produce adaptations anymore, then we'll take it out. But if I'm thinking, hey, we're on the track of we're going to keep making gains with this, don't rewrite the wheel. Because here's the thing, when you add in new exercises, even if it's something like we're just going to add a band to this or whatever, there's always going to be that little learning curve. And so that means the first week or two, they're maybe not using enough weight to get those adaptations or whatever the case may be. If you keep changing up the exercises all the time, there's always going to be that 2-week learning curve where you're not really getting that much out of it anymore. So I like to think about that, but I also like to think about too, there's no law out there that says if you just squat, bench, and deadlift for your whole life, and rows are good too. If you just did those 4 your whole life, what's going to happen? You're probably going to be pretty damn strong, and you're going to cover a lot of bases. So why not just do that and then add things on top of it that maybe we need to do, a little more shoulder care, a little more explosive work, whatever the case may be. But, just keep the main things that work, the main thing. Because like I said, there's no law, there's no research that says after 3 months of doing this exercise, it didn't work anymore. No, nobody says that. It's not real. So we know that it will continue to work. Why not just keep doing it? Because we're good at it. By 3 months into a program, we should be really good at lunging, really good at deadlifting. We should have great technique in all of our pressing movements. They're feeling good. Don't rewrite the wheel when you don't have to.
We've been on here a while, and I know you've got guys coming in, and we've got some things going here too. So, and start bringing this thing around to the end. But what I read one of your articles, and we had kind of started the podcast in this direction about writing a book. But the one thing that kind of jumped out at me, and I'm a super nerd, I keep notebooks everywhere I go. But you said you had mentioned in the writing process, and this can go further than the writing process, but not letting good ideas escape, and getting things wrote down as quickly as you can so that you don't have to worry about remembering some of these great ideas you have. We think we won't ever forget them. An idea pops in our head. We're like, hey, we won't forget this. This is awesome. And then you forget it 3 hours later because life happens. Yep. When did the idea of, hey, I need to find a way to track these good ideas in the moment and that I can come back and look at them again later? When did that happen?
I want to say it probably happened back during like COVID time because you had a lot more time to just sit around and think about stuff. I think that back then I started doing a lot more like, all right, I say it out loud, I write it, like we're always doing that and just keeping that process. I mean, I just do it on my phone. Like, I just use the notes app or something. I don't try to get fancy with it. I guess you could do pen and paper. That's probably a little bit better than using your phone all the time, but I'm always on like just speech to text. I'm just talking into my phone and, having it write down for the apps or the notes app. When I'm in the car, I'll be listening to one of those binaural beats where it's just buzzing or like tinging, some sort of weird hertz. Like, I don't know why I feel like it helps me sort of zone out and just kind of like just do nothing but drive. And I'll be doing that for about 5-10 minutes. And I'll just start kind of talking to myself about different things that are on my mind with hitting, throwing, lifting, whatever the case may be. And so I'm just kind of talking things through. If I was talking to someone like yourself, or if I was talking through with a kid or a parent, what we should be trying to do with training. And that's kind of where all these ideas come from, is like, imagine if you're talking to someone, what are the questions they're going to be asking you? Oh, why is this like this? Or, why do I need to be working explosive stuff? Why can't I just do 1 rep maxes all the time? So on and so forth. There's always something in my brain like of working through with baseball related training. So I'll just have speech to text going, and I'll just write it all down and kind of sort it out later at the end of the night or the end of the week or something like that. But that's kind of what I do. It's a lot tougher now to get writing done with the baby at home too. I try to keep her away from screens and stuff like that as much as I can. And good luck with that one. But but the thing is, like, I found that like just driving in the car, zoning out a little bit, just trying to get your brain to almost think about nothing for a little while helps you start coming up with more ideas. It's really interesting how that goes.
I'll end with this one, and it's something I've been thinking about more as I see the game different. but increases in velocity, whether that be pitching, whether that be hitting, whether that be maximal speed, whatever that may be, the game really in its smallest elemental form is you're either giving time or you're taking time. Getting athletes to understand that, hey, you're never even. If we're not increasing your exit velo, or if we're not increasing your swing speed, then you're giving the pitcher time. If you're not increasing your velocity of the pitch, you're giving the batter time. If you're not increasing your linear speed, you're giving the fielder time. How are you able to kind of get that broke down into ideas that are pretty digestible but make the most amount of sense to your athletes?
Well, the easiest way is just to look at what happens at each level. From the high school level, freshman, you're facing kids that throw 70 to 75. JV, varsity, you're starting to face 80, 85 miles per hour. And now if you want to play at the high college level, the higher the college level is, the harder those guys are throwing. So if you want to climb up those levels, you yourself better have a brain, vision, swing speed, everything that can match that. If you don't have the engine to be able to match that, you better start working on the engine. If you don't have the driver up here, if you haven't been seeing that type of pitching, you better start working on that too. So that's really the main basic way to break it down. I do try to think about keeping things separate of like, let's focus on this bucket today. Let's focus on your strength and speed buckets in these days. And now today is going to be a really challenging hitting day. Let's keep it light everywhere else. Let's only focus on the hitting stuff for this 45-minute to an hour-long window. And I feel like that's one way to really get a lot of quality work in on a day, is just giving them what their sole focus is for the day and try to master that. I do feel like that's a one way to sort of keep climbing up that ladder, if you will, rather than saying, man, I need 100 pounds of my squat, 100 pounds of my deadlift, 80 pounds of my bench. I need all of this, and I got to hit more fast pitching. Like, that's a lot to think about in one day. So kind of giving kids something that's more digestible in one training session is, I feel, pretty beneficial. But regardless, back to your question, yeah, it's tough. Like, no doubt about it. No matter what way you spin it, baseball only gets tougher, and it's only going to keep getting tougher because players keep getting better. And that's the reality of the game.
My experience is mostly softball, and TV does not do the game justice when you go to Oklahoma City and you're watching the College World Series, or you go to Colorado and you go to the Sparkler and you're watching, Elite 18s play. That game is at a whole different level than what you can imagine. So if you're not increasing the idea that, hey, if I'm not getting faster, if I'm not getting stronger, and if I'm not getting quicker, I'm not going to be able to play at these upper levels.
1,000%, because your brain can only come up with so many solutions when your body is at that much of a deficit where you're just not an explosive individual. And vice versa. Like, your body can be super explosive if your eyes, your vision, your brain, everything's not operating at the highest level. Your body can't make up for that much either. You know what I mean?
Coach, this has been amazing. I loved your book. I thought the price was right. I bought it. It opened up some avenues. Some it reinforced some ideas, but then it added some ideas to what we're doing and the preparation we're putting in on our athletes. So I can't thank you enough for putting something out there that was affordable and beneficial all at the same time. And thank you for sitting down today. I know you're incredibly busy right now with the new baby, and baseball season's going hard, but to sit down for a little while and do this, I'm really appreciative.
For sure. Thank you so much. And I guess if there's one thing that I could leave any kid or any parent listening to this, like I said, I've trained 3 big leaguers now. And the one thing all of them have in common is that they've all taken probably 250,000 swings in their life before they even got to the big leagues. 250,000. So if you're to break that down, they're talking 25,000 swings a year for so many years to get there. It takes a long time. There's no fast route to get there. I know that you'll see this kid that just got drafted. He got paid $3 million. You see this other kid, looks like he's ahead of everybody. He's going to get drafted someday, all that stuff. And that's cool. That's awesome. Good for them. But understand that the game that you're playing, especially nowadays with recruiting as tough as it is, everything, we're trying to get to that high-level college scholarship. We're trying to be one of those people, and then we want to try to play professionally. That's going to take many years to get to. It's not going to come as a 16-year-old the way that it used to maybe when we were kids. So it's play the long game and never, ever, ever stop enjoying the games themselves. If you like training more than playing, we're starting to run into some problems here. So make sure that you're doing the things, keeping your mental sort of capacity for the game right, so that you do love playing as much or more than training.
I believe that was probably the best way to summarize the whole podcast, is while training is what we talked about the most. If you're not having fun in what you're doing, it's just a job, and burnout's right behind a job.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. So, all right, man. Well, thank you so much for having me on. This was great.
Well, I appreciate it. It's something I've wanted to do for a while, so I was glad we were able to find something in our schedules and do it. So if you get any new books out or anything like that, hit me up and we will do this again.
For sure. Thank you so much.
All right, man. Have a great afternoon.
You too.
Hey, Voodoo Power listeners. Thanks for watching and spending a little time listening to the coaches that we present on here. The channel has been growing because of community, and I really appreciate you being part of it. If you found this video helpful, hit the like button, leave a comment to let me know your thoughts, and share it with someone who might enjoy it. Those small things make a big difference in helping the channel reach more athletes and coaches. And if you haven't already, consider subscribing so you don't miss the next video. Thanks again for being here, and I'll see you on the next one.